Have you ever wondered why your retirement savings account feels more like a ticking time bomb than a safety net? Here's a truth that most financial advisors won't tell you. After 60, keeping your money locked away in traditional bank savings might be the single biggest threat to your financial security. I know this sounds completely backwards, especially after spending your entire adult life being told to save, 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 but stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover could be the difference between a retirement filled with anxiety and one spent in genuine peace of mind. Think about it for a moment. You've worked for decades, built up what you thought was a comfortable nest egg, followed all the conventional wisdom about putting money aside. You've been the responsible one, the disciplined one, yet somehow, when you look at your bank statements, there's this nagging feeling that something isn't quite right. The numbers might look decent on paper, but deep down, you sense that your money isn't working hard enough for you. Has this ever happened to you? You're not alone, and more importantly, you're not imagining it. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Here's the uncomfortable reality that the banking industry doesn't want you to acknowledge. After 60, the rules of the game change completely. What worked brilliantly in your 30s and 40s, that steady, conservative approach of funneling money into savings accounts, becomes dangerously inadequate when you cross that threshold into your golden years. The problem isn't your discipline or your commitment to saving. The problem is that you're playing by an outdated rulebook that was written for a completely different stage of your financial life. When you're young, time is your greatest ally. A market crash at 35, painful, yes, but you've got 30 years to recover. A bad investment decision at 42, you can tighten your belt, work a few extra years, rebuild what was lost. But after 60, something fundamental shifts beneath your feet. Suddenly, time stops being your friend and starts becoming your most relentless adversary. A significant financial setback at this stage doesn't just mean postponing that dream vacation or cutting back on restaurants for a while. It can permanently alter the trajectory of your entire retirement, transforming what should have been your most enjoyable years into a period of constant financial stress and worry. What most people don't realize until it's almost too late is that you now have more financial years behind you than ahead of you. This isn't pessimism, it's mathematics. And this mathematical reality demands a completely different approach to how you position and protect your wealth. The strategies that built your nest egg are not the same strategies that will preserve it and make it work for you throughout retirement. So if traditional bank savings aren't the answer after 60, what is? What you're about to discover might surprise you. The transformation that needs to happen in your mind after 60 is something most people never talk about, yet it's absolutely critical to your financial survival. When you're younger, there's this constant pressure to chase opportunities, to jump on the latest investment trend, to not miss out on what everyone else seems to be profiting from. That fear of missing out, FOMO as it's commonly called, drives so many hasty decisions. You see your coworker making money in cryptocurrency, your neighbor bragging about their tech stocks, and suddenly your carefully planned strategy feels inadequate, even foolish. But here's the hidden truth that represents a complete mindset revolution. After age 60, FOMO becomes irrelevant. What should genuinely terrify you isn't missing opportunities. It's what I call FOBO, or the fear of blowing out. This might sound like just another acronym, but behind the scenes, this psychological shift is what separates those who retire comfortably from those who spend their golden years in constant financial anxiety. Think about the impact of this revelation. The wealth you've spent 30, 40, maybe even 50 years building can be decimated by a single ill-timed decision. One moment of weakness where you chase that exciting opportunity everyone's talking about. And here's the brutal reality. You have virtually no runway left for recovery. This journey from FOMO to FOBO isn't just about changing your investment strategy. It's about fundamentally rewiring how you think about money itself. When you embrace this new mindset, something remarkable happens. You stop feeling anxious about market run-ups you didn't participate in. You stop comparing your returns to your golf buddy's latest investment score. Instead, you gain this incredible clarity about what actually matters at this stage of your life: durability, reliability, and capital preservation. Now, I want to go even deeper into what might sound like the most counterintuitive advice you'll hear today. After 60, boring becomes beautiful. I know. We live in a world that's obsessed with disruption, innovation, excitement. The financial media bombards you daily with stories of overnight millionaires and spectacular investment wins that make traditional approaches seem hopelessly outdated. But here's the paradox that changes everything. The less thrilling your investment approach becomes after 60, the more thrilling your actual retirement will be. Those dividend-paying stocks that your grandfather used to talk about. The municipal bonds that sound about as exciting as watching paint dry. The rental property that just sits there generating monthly income. These investments lack any adrenaline rush whatsoever. They won't make for impressive stories at dinner parties. You'll never excite anyone by discussing them. But they provide something infinitely more valuable than excitement. They give you the ability to sleep soundly at night, knowing your financial foundation remains secure regardless of whatever chaos is happening in the markets. The real revelation here is understanding where your financial excitement should actually come from in your golden years. It shouldn't come from checking your portfolio every morning to see if your volatile investments surged or crashed. Financial excitement after 60 should come from having the freedom and security to actually live your life without that constant undercurrent of financial anxiety. It's about waking up and deciding to take that trip you've always dreamed about, not worrying about whether the market's having a good day or a bad day. If you've started to see boring investments in a completely new light, write in the comments, security over excitement. This shift in perspective might be the most valuable financial decision you ever make. The journey toward financial security after 60 requires understanding not just what to do, but more importantly, what to absolutely avoid. If you were to examine the wreckage of destroyed retirement portfolios, and believe me, there are far too many of them, you'd discover something fascinating. Almost every single one contains the same three toxic ingredients, like a poison recipe that guarantees financial disaster. These elements are leverage, excessive complexity, and speculative positions. And the hidden truth is that most people don't even realize they're being exposed to these dangers until it's far too late. Leverage sounds sophisticated, almost professional. It's just a fancy word for using borrowed money to amplify your investment returns. The banks and brokers make it sound so appealing. Why invest just your own money when you can control much more? But here's the brutal reality that unfolds behind the scenes. While leverage can enhance your gains when things go well, it absolutely ruthlessly magnifies your losses when markets turn against you. A setback that might be uncomfortable for someone investing only their own money becomes an absolute catastrophe when debt is involved. After 60, when your timeline for recovery shrinks dramatically, this amplification effect transforms manageable problems into extinction-level events for your portfolio. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd really appreciate having you join us here. We explore financial strategies that actually protect your wealth, not just the flashy tactics that grab headlines. Hit that subscribe button and let's continue these conversations together. Then there's complexity. I've seen this pattern play out countless times. Someone gets sold on a sophisticated financial product, something with multiple layers and moving parts, structured notes or exotic derivatives or complex annuities that even the person selling them barely understands. This complexity serves one primary purpose: to obscure risk. When you can't clearly see what you own or how it actually works, you can't properly assess the danger you're in. The transformation that needs to happen in your thinking is simple yet profound. If you can't explain an investment to a reasonably intelligent teenager in plain language, it probably has no business in your post-60 portfolio. Speculative positions represent the third ingredient in this toxic mix. These are the gambles, the moonshots, this could really take off investments that belong in a young person's portfolio, not in the foundation of your retirement security. What should be protected gets treated like a casino chip, and the impact of that decision can be devastating when you no longer have decades to rebuild. Now, I want to go even deeper into something that might surprise you, a psychological factor that destroys more retirement wealth than market crashes or bad economies ever could. It's envy. And here's why this emotion is particularly insidious. Unlike other destructive behaviors that at least provide some momentary pleasure, envy delivers nothing but pure misery while simultaneously wrecking your financial decisions. Your neighbor mentions their cryptocurrency windfall at a barbecue. Your brother-in-law casually drops hints about the killing he's making in some tech stock. Your golf partner seems to have an inside track on investments that are doubling and tripling. Suddenly, your carefully constructed, appropriately conservative strategy feels inadequate. You start questioning decisions that were perfectly aligned with your goals just days earlier. This is the moment where decades of disciplined investing can be abandoned in a few weeks of weakness, chasing returns that other people claim to be getting. But here's the revelation that changes everything. Your neighbor's financial journey has precisely zero impact on your ability to meet your own retirement goals. Financial independence isn't a competition with rankings and prizes for first place. It's about having enough to support the life you want to live, with sufficient security to weather whatever storms inevitably come your way. The comparison game is a trap that serves no purpose except to push you toward increasingly risky decisions at precisely the stage of life when you can least afford mistakes. If you've ever felt that twinge of financial envy when hearing about someone else's investment success, type in the comments, "My path, my pace." Acknowledging this very human tendency is often the first step toward freedom from its destructive influence. The transformation that occurs when you stop viewing retirement as a race against others represents one of the most liberating shifts you'll ever experience. For most of your working life, there's been this constant scoreboard mentality, comparing salaries, comparing houses, comparing investment returns with colleagues and neighbors. It's exhausting, and more importantly, it's completely counterproductive to your actual financial well-being. But something remarkable happens the moment you genuinely embrace the idea that your retirement is your unique path, not a competition with anyone else. The anxiety that used to grip you every time the market dipped starts to fade. That compulsive need to check your portfolio, balance multiple times a day, begins to diminish. You stop lying awake at night wondering if you should have bought what your friend was talking about at dinner. What emerges in place of all that stress is something I call financial sovereignty. The ability to make decisions based entirely on your personal circumstances, your specific needs, your individual timeline, rather than reacting to external pressures or keeping up with what everyone else seems to be doing. This journey toward financial sovereignty isn't just about peace of mind, though that alone would be worth it. Behind the scenes, this mindset shift fundamentally improves your actual investment decisions. When you're no longer making choices through the distorted lens of comparison and competition, you can see clearly what you actually need. Maybe you don't need spectacular returns because you've already saved enough. Maybe you can accept slightly lower yields in exchange for dramatically reduced risk. These are the kinds of nuanced personal decisions that become possible only when you've freed yourself from the comparison trap. Now, I want to go even deeper into a strategy that embodies this patient, non-competitive approach, one that runs completely counter to the frenetic trading mentality promoted by so much of the financial industry. When you discover a truly exceptional business, one with durable competitive advantages, strong management, and a proven history of rewarding its shareholders, the winning strategy is often breathtakingly simple. Just hold it. Don't overthink it. Don't try to time the perfect exit. Don't sell just because it's had a good run. Just hold. This revelation contradicts so much of what you see and hear in financial media. They want you to believe that successful investing requires constant activity, sophisticated timing, buying low and selling high with precision. But the hidden truth is far simpler and, paradoxically, far more effective. The biggest regret that experienced investors consistently express isn't about the losers they picked. It's about the winners they sold too early. They had their hands on something truly valuable and let it go, usually for reasons that seemed sensible at the time but proved short-sighted in retrospect. Quality businesses with strong dividends and robust balance sheets provide exactly what you need in retirement. They generate growing income streams that you can count on quarter after quarter, year after year. They offer relative stability compared to speculative investments that swing wildly with every tweet or trend. Most importantly, they work for you while you're busy actually living your retirement, not glued to a screen watching every tick of the market. The impact of embracing this hold great businesses philosophy extends beyond just returns. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of constant decision-making. Should I sell? Should I buy more? Is this the top? Is this the bottom? When you identify quality and commit to holding it, all those anxious questions simply evaporate. You're no longer a trader trying to outsmart the market. You become an owner, participating in genuine wealth creation over time. If you've recognized that your greatest investment returns often came from things you simply held rather than traded, write in the comments, patience pays. Sometimes the most powerful financial strategy is having the discipline to do nothing at all. The journey toward financial wisdom, after 60, requires developing a highly tuned detector for what I call the confidence paradox. You've probably noticed this pattern yourself. Turn on any financial news channel and you'll encounter experts speaking with absolute certainty about where the market is heading, which sectors will explode, exactly what interest rates will do next quarter. They speak with such conviction, such unwavering confidence, that it feels almost irresponsible not to listen. But here's the hidden truth that reveals itself when you look behind the scenes at actual track records. The louder and more confidently someone proclaims their market predictions, the more likely they are to be catastrophically wrong. This revelation completely transforms how you consume financial information. Genuine expertise doesn't look or sound like what you see on television. Real investment wisdom is characterized by nuanced understanding of probabilities, careful consideration of multiple scenarios, acknowledgement of uncertainty. It sounds tentative, measured, qualified, exactly the opposite of what grabs attention and generates clicks in today's media landscape. The truly knowledgeable investors speak in terms of possibilities rather than certainties, in ranges rather than precise predictions. They say things like, based on historical patterns we might see, instead of the market will definitely. The impact of understanding this paradox cannot be overstated. especially after 60 when following misguided. Certainty can devastate your financial security. When you develop immunity to bombastic predictions, you protect yourself from the costly mistakes that come from acting on someone else's overconfidence. You stop making impulsive decisions based on the latest hot take from some talking head who sounds impressive but has no accountability for the consequences of being wrong. Now, I want to go even deeper into perhaps the most fundamental mindset transformation that determines financial outcomes. After 60, the shift from employee thinking to owner thinking. Most people spend their entire careers optimizing for the wrong things. They chase promotions, corner offices, impressive job titles, company cars, all the status symbols that come with climbing the corporate ladder. There's nothing inherently wrong with career advancement, but here's the brutal reality that becomes painfully clear in retirement. Titles don't compound. Ownership does. This distinction represents a complete revolution in how you think about wealth building. Employee thinking asks questions like, how do I impress my boss, and what title can I achieve? Owner thinking asks fundamentally different questions. Do I own anything that works for me when I'm not working? And what assets am I building that will generate income regardless of my time or effort? The transformation between these two mindsets often determines whether someone retires comfortably or struggles despite decades of high income. Consider the real-world impact of this shift. Real estate that generates monthly rent checks doesn't care whether you're at your desk or on a beach somewhere. Dividend-paying stocks send you quarterly payments, whether you're actively managing them or sleeping soundly at night. Business stakes or partnerships continue producing income streams, even when you're spending time with grandchildren or pursuing hobbies you never had time for during your working years. These ownership positions work tirelessly on your behalf, compounding and growing while you actually live your life. The journey from employee to owner thinking isn't about quitting your job tomorrow or abandoning your career. It's about redirecting your energy and capital toward building things that outlast your active working years. It's about asking yourself honestly whether you've been collecting impressive credentials and status symbols, or whether you've been systematically building assets that will support you when the paychecks stop coming. If you've started making this mental shift from chasing titles to building ownership, write in the comments, assets over status. This transformation might be the single most important financial decision you make. The transformation in perspective that separates financially secure retirees from those who struggle often comes down to understanding one profound historical truth. Prosperity is not the default setting of economic life. This might sound pessimistic at first, but it's actually one of the most protective realizations you can internalize after 60. We tend to view recessions and downturns as temporary disruptions in an otherwise smooth upward trajectory. But when you look at economic history with clear eyes, you see something quite different. A natural pendulum that swings between periods of growth and contraction, sometimes gently, sometimes violently. This historical awareness fundamentally changes how you assess risk. The investors who lived through genuinely difficult economic periods, who witnessed firsthand how quickly prosperity can evaporate, developed an almost instinctive caution that protected their wealth through subsequent crises. They understood behind the scenes that the good times never last forever, and neither do the bad times. But more importantly, they recognized that when you're over 60, you need to be positioned for whatever comes next, not just optimistically assuming the best-case scenario will unfold. The impact of this mindset becomes especially critical when you consider how much of modern investing advice is built on blind optimism. The financial industry essentially assumes perpetual growth, continuous expansion, endless prosperity. But economic reality doesn't work that way. When you truly grasp that economic conditions fluctuate cyclically and sometimes severely, you naturally build in protections that others ignore. You maintain larger cash reserves. You diversify not just across investments, but across different economic scenarios. You don't bet everything on growth continuing indefinitely. Now, I want to go even deeper into what might be the most underappreciated skill in all of investing after 60, the power of 3 simple words. I don't know. This revelation runs completely counter to how most successful people are wired. You've spent your entire career being rewarded for having answers, for demonstrating expertise, for projecting confidence even in uncertainty. The admission of ignorance feels like weakness, like failure, like something to avoid at all costs. But here's the hidden truth about successful investing. It isn't about being a know-it-all. It's about recognizing precisely what you don't understand and having the discipline to avoid those areas entirely. These 3 words become an absolute superpower when applied to investment decisions. Think about the journey that most people take with complex investments. Someone presents them with an opportunity in an area they don't really understand. Maybe it's a sophisticated financial instrument, or a business model they can't quite grasp, or a technology that seems interesting but remains fuzzy in their mind. Instead of simply saying, "I don't know enough about this to invest," they feel pressured to form an opinion, to make a decision, to not appear ignorant. The transformation happens when you give yourself permission to acknowledge the limits of your understanding without shame or embarrassment. By saying, "I don't know," you naturally avoid betting on things that fall outside your circle of competence. You stick to areas where you can actually make reasonable, informed judgments. This isn't about limiting your opportunities. It's about protecting yourself from the countless ways that ignorance masquerading as knowledge destroys wealth, especially after 60, when mistakes become exponentially more costly. If this perspective on retirement investing made sense to you, go ahead and hit that like button. It's a simple way to let me know this content is valuable, and it helps others who need this message find it too. The impact of embracing intellectual honesty extends far beyond just avoiding bad investments. It creates mental space for deeper thinking in areas where you do have genuine insight. Instead of spreading your attention across dozens of things you barely understand, you can focus on the handful of investment types where you've developed real competence through experience. And study. If you've discovered the freedom that comes from admitting "I don't know" instead of pretending to understand everything, write in the comments, "Circle of Competence." Sometimes the wisest investment decision is simply recognizing what falls outside your area of expertise. The journey toward protecting your wealth after 60 can be distilled into a surprisingly simple formula. One that focuses more on what you avoid than what you pursue. This revelation transforms how you think about financial security because it emphasizes prevention over action. The 3 critical habits that shield your retirement from disaster can be reduced to 3 straightforward subtractions: avoiding debt, avoiding drama, and avoiding what I'll tactfully call dumb people. Debt acts as a magnifier for every mistake you make. A poor investment decision that might cost you 10% of your capital becomes catastrophic when leverage is involved. After 60, when your ability to earn and rebuild diminishes with each passing year, debt transforms manageable setbacks into potential extinction events for your financial security. The hidden truth here is profound. Financial freedom often depends less on what you own and more on what you don't owe. Every dollar of debt you carry represents a claim against your future, a vulnerability that can be exploited by circumstances beyond your control. Drama represents the second critical avoidance. This isn't just about avoiding difficult people, though that's certainly part of it. Drama encompasses all the emotional turbulence that wastes precious mental energy on reactions, rather than thoughtful responses. When you constantly react to market swings, news headlines, or hot investment tips, you're burning cognitive fuel that could be directed toward clear, rational thinking. The impact of drama on your financial decisions is insidious because it feels justified in the moment. Of course, you should worry about that market dip. Of course, you should react to that breaking news. But behind the scenes, this constant emotional churn leads to impulsive decisions that almost always damage long-term outcomes. The third element might sound harsh, but it's absolutely critical. You need to avoid reckless, dishonest, or shortcut-addicted people in your financial life. These individuals create a form of social contagion that affects your judgment in ways you might not even recognize. When everyone around you is taking excessive risks, those risks start to seem normal, even prudent. When your social circle celebrates get-rich-quick schemes, disciplined long-term investing starts to feel foolish. The transformation that protects your wealth involves being ruthlessly selective about whose advice you listen to and whose behavior you allow to influence your decisions. Now, I want to go even deeper into a mathematical reality that governs all financial outcomes, yet somehow gets overlooked in the constant chase for excitement. There's genuine magic in steady compounding, but it's the kind of magic that reveals itself slowly, almost imperceptibly, until suddenly you look back and realize the extraordinary power of patience. A reliable 7% return, consistently achieved and reinvested, doubles your money approximately every decade. Think about the impact of that simple fact. With just 15 years of patience, your capital grows by nearly 3 times, without taking extraordinary risks or making brilliant predictions, or timing anything perfectly. The revelation here completely inverts conventional financial wisdom. The financial media glorifies the spectacular, the stock that quintupled, the perfectly timed trade, the investor who called the crash. But behind the scenes, the patient investor who simply achieves reasonable, consistent returns ends up substantially wealthier than the excitement chaser. Not because they're smarter or luckier, but because they avoided the catastrophic mistakes that inevitably accompany the pursuit of spectacular gains. This journey toward embracing steady compounding requires fighting against every instinct that modern culture has cultivated in us. We want results now, excitement today, dramatic gains this quarter. But wealth after 60 isn't built on drama. It's built on the almost boring consistency of reasonable returns accumulating year after year, unthreatened by leverage, undisturbed by drama, protected from the influence of reckless thinking. If you've come to appreciate the quiet power of consistent returns over flashy gains, write in the comments, "Boring wins." Sometimes the most revolutionary financial strategy is simply refusing to be interesting. The transformation toward financial security after 60 ultimately rests on one brutally simple mathematical reality that transcends every sophisticated strategy, every clever investment technique, every market timing attempt. If you don't spend less than you earn, no investment strategy on earth can save you. This truth is so fundamental, so obvious, that it often gets completely overlooked in discussions about retirement planning. Yet behind the scenes, this single behavioral pattern determines financial outcomes more than any other factor. The hidden truth reveals itself when you examine real-world cases. I've witnessed people earning 7-figure salaries who end up broke in retirement because they consistently lived beyond their means. Every raise triggered a lifestyle upgrade. Every bonus justified a bigger purchase. The income kept climbing, but so did the spending, always staying one step ahead of what they brought in. Meanwhile, modest earners with disciplined spending habits retire in genuine comfort, not because they made brilliant investments, but because they understood and respected this fundamental arithmetic. The impact of this realization becomes transformative when you start viewing every dollar through a different lens. Each dollar you don't spend isn't just money. saved. It becomes a soldier in your financial army, working tirelessly on your behalf to produce more dollars through investment returns. That $100 you didn't spend on an unnecessary purchase doesn't just stay as $100 sitting idle. It becomes $100 generating returns, which generate more returns, compounding year after year in a virtuous cycle that accelerates the longer it continues. This journey toward living below your means requires fighting against massive cultural pressure. We're constantly bombarded with messages encouraging consumption, lifestyle inflation, keeping up with peers. The entire advertising industry exists to convince you that happiness lies just one purchase away. But the revelation that changes everything is recognizing that financial independence represents a declaration of freedom from this consumption treadmill, especially crucial after 60, when earning power diminishes and the runway for recovery disappears. Now, I want to go even deeper into what might be the most uncomfortable truth about achieving financial security after 60. The greatest obstacles you face aren't technical, but psychological. This distinction matters profoundly because it shifts where you direct your attention and energy. The principles that lead to financial independence aren't complicated or mysterious. Spend less than you earn, avoid debt, invest in quality assets and hold them. Don't chase excitement. Stay within your circle of competence. These guidelines are remarkably straightforward, almost embarrassingly simple, but here's where the real challenge emerges. These principles require something far more difficult than technical knowledge. They demand emotional discipline to follow common sense guidelines even when everyone around you is doing the opposite. When your neighbors are leveraging themselves into bigger houses, when your friends are bragging about speculative gains, when the financial media is screaming about opportunities you're missing, that's when you need the psychological strength to stick with your plan. The battle for your financial future isn't fought primarily in the marketplace. It's fought in the mirror. Every day you face decisions about whether to maintain discipline or give in to impulses, whether to stay the course or chase what seems exciting, whether to protect what you've built or gamble on building it faster. These decisions happen internally, in the space between stimulus and response, where your character and discipline either hold firm or crumble. If you've recognized that your financial journey is fundamentally about mastering yourself rather than mastering the markets, write in the comments, "Inner game matters." This acknowledgement might be the breakthrough that changes everything about your financial future. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, you've just absorbed insights that most people spend decades learning the hard way. Or worse, never learn at all. The fact that you're still here tells me something important about you. You're serious about protecting what you've built and making intelligent decisions about your financial future after 60. That matters. This is exactly the kind of conversation I want to continue having with you. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd genuinely love to have you as part of this community. We dive deep into financial wisdom that cuts through the noise, the hype, and the half-truths that dominate so much of the mainstream advice out there. Real strategies, honest conversations, no gimmicks. And if you made it all the way to the end, write in the comments, "Defense over offense." It helps me understand who's really connecting with this message. And honestly, it's encouraging to know these ideas resonate with people who are willing to think differently about their retirement years. That like button. If this conversation shifted something in how you think about money after 60, go ahead and click it. It's a small gesture that makes a genuine difference in helping others discover these insights when they need them most. There's another video right here that takes these principles even further. Practical steps you can implement immediately to start repositioning your wealth for genuine security. Click and continue with me over there. The conversation's just getting started.